One of Photoshop's most popular filters is Liquify. What it allows you to do is brush in distortions and make structural modifications to an image. In CS6, Liquify has received some minor but important enhancements. Now, the Liquify filter is not applicable to smart objects. You have to apply it to a pixel-based image, such as the one I have open here. I'm going to go up to the filter menu and choose the Liquify command. And I'll zoom in on the image. Now, the first thing you may notice about Liquify is that it's more responsive, especially when you're working on very large image files. And that's because it's one of a handful of features that have been integrated into Adobe's so-called Mercury graphics engine. And what that means is many of its routines have been handed off to the GPU. And other examples of commands like this, by the way, are warp, puppet warp, some stuff that's going on with the new crop tool, and 3D shadows and reflections, which we'll look at in a future movie. The other thing worth noting is that the interface has been dramatically simplified, particularly over here on the right-hand side of the screen, which makes a lot of sense because most people spend most of their time in this filter using one and only one tool, which is the warp tool here. However, if you do want to gain access to all the controls, you can turn on the advanced mode checkbox. Also worth noting, you can change the size of the cursor by pressing the left and right bracket keys. That was true in the past too, but the increments have been changed, and there's a new way to change the size of the brush. On the PC, you press the Alt key and you right drag, like so. So you press the right mouse button and drag. On the Mac, you press the Control and Option keys, not the Command key, but the Control and Option keys, and you drag. Not right drag, just a standard drag, and that will allow you to change the size of that cursor. All right, here's my favorite feature. I'm going to go ahead and load a mesh that I've created in advance. And I called my mesh Liquify settings.msh. I'll just go ahead and open it on up. And as you can see, it goes ahead and straightens out this woman's posture. Now I'll turn off the advanced mode checkbox and I'll click OK in order to accept that change. Now here's the thing. What happens as often as not, at least for me, when I'm using Liquify, is after I click OK, I end up looking at the image and finding some problem with it. And so I figure, gosh, I'll go ahead and undo what I did, and then I'll pick up from where I left off. So you press Control-Z or Command-Z on the Mac to undo the change, and then you go back up to the filter menu, choose Liquify again, and your settings are not there. So you can't take up where you last left off unless, in the past, you went ahead and saved off your mesh. So you had to deliberately save the mesh before you left the dialog box, and almost nobody thinks to do that. Now we have a safety valve, and this is totally an awesome feature here. You can load your last mesh, so you can start from where you left off by clicking on that button. And then you can make some additional modifications and click OK and get exactly the results that you're looking for. Now, I want to show you one more thing that works outside of Liquify. I'm going to go ahead and select the brush tool. And you can see I have a pretty big brush going. Now, if you press the Alt key here on the PC and right drag, like so, when you drag to the right or left, you're going to change the size of your brush. When you drag down and up, you're going to change the softness of your brush. Now, you Macintosh people, you would press the Control and Option keys, and then you would drag either to the right or the left, or down to get a harder brush, or up to get a softer brush. However, notice there's another option right there, opacity. If you'd rather trade hardness for opacity, then press Control-K or Command-K on the Mac to bring up the Preferences dialog box, and you'll see that there's this checkbox right there, Vary Round Brush Hardness based on HUD vertical movement. Turn that off, and you can now change the opacity on the fly. And you do so, just as I showed you before. You press the Alt key and right drag left and right for diameter, and then you drag up to lower the opacity and down to raise the opacity. On the Mac, you would press the Control and Option keys and drag back and forth for diameter, or drag up to reduce the opacity and down to increase the opacity. So there you have the enhanced Liquify filter and a new way to adjust brush opacity here in Photoshop CS6.